Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm setting up my bullet journal for the last month of this year, which feels pretty weird to say, but I wanted to show you a flip through of my November spreads first, as always, which I think turned out really pretty. Now, if you're thinking about getting a journal for the new year or anything else from Argent Olive, which is where I get my journals, you can use my affiliate code ARTandBUJAs to get 10% off. And just as a small side note, if you recreate any of my spreads or themes, don't forget to tag me on Instagram at ArtandBUJAs so that I can interact with your post. But anyway, I did end up skipping a week, so I only had 3 weekly spreads, and then I'm starting my December setup on the next 2 pages. I always find it a bit harder to come up with theme ideas for the winter months because everything in nature is usually a lot less lively. So for this year, I decided on a really simple kind of like dreamy clouds and moon theme, and I was inspired by the beautiful sunrises we get this time of year where I live. Also, I always leave a list of all the products I use down below, so if you're ever curious, you can check the video description. Now, as you saw, I picked some peachy pink shades and a grayish blue as my color palette because I really like the contrast of using warm and cool colors. And first I'm making my work calendar / planner where I like to keep track of different types of work, for example for YouTube or Instagram. I used the blue as a background for the weekdays on the top, and then this peachy shade for where I'm gonna write the dates. The days are 2 spaces wide and 3 spaces tall, and then since the first row of each week is used for the dates, I'm left with 4 empty boxes for each day. I do this specifically because I currently track 4 types of work, so I choose a color for each one, and then I can fill out the calendar kind of like a habit tracker. This just helps me to visualize how often and when I work on, for example, YouTube or Instagram, and I can also see when I have more free time to spare each week. I made the borders in black with a ruler because I really like that clean look, and then I also wrote the weekdays and the dates with that same gel pen. I always like writing 2 digits for the dates because I think it makes the spread look a little bit more even and balanced, and I also included the dates from November and January. Here I'm just crossing out the boxes from November and January because I'm not going to use them, and I used that more kind of vibrant orange shade because I wanted to incorporate all the colors. Underneath the calendar I'm adding my color code like I mentioned before, and this month I'm tracking YouTube, Instagram, my freelance shop, and my Etsy shop. To decorate the page a bit, I decided to draw these little clouds, and I switched between the 3 warm shades and made them look really cute and fluffy with a flat bottom. I made the shapes first with the marker, and then I'm going in with my black gel pen to draw the outlines, first off because it can smudge a little bit if you do it the other way around, and second because I find it easier to make the round shapes with the markers. Then I also drew a moon and a bunch of little stars, and I ended up coloring in the moon with that blue marker as well. On the bottom of the page, I'm adding my usual YouTube and Instagram growth trackers, and I always like to keep them super simple, so it's just a box where I can write down my sub and follower count on the first and the last day of the month, and then also add how many I gained within that period. Next to them, I just filled that empty spot with 2 more clouds, a moon, and some stars. And then here I decided to color in the moon because I felt like it would balance out the cover idea I had, which you'll see in a little bit. Speaking of, for the cover page, I'm first marking out this rectangle with some washi tape because I wanted the edges to be nice and clean, and I didn't want to accidentally color outside the lines. And I used that blue marker to kind of indicate a sky on the top that slowly fades out, and this way I don't have to be super careful, which makes it a lot easier. Next, on the bottom, I used those 3 shades again to draw a bunch of clouds on top of each other, and I just started with the ones on the bottom and then added more going towards the top so that it looks like they're kind of behind one another. And I tried to make sure that the colors are always alternating so that none of the clouds touching each other are the same color. I also tried to vary the shapes a lot to make them look more interesting. Then I'm going in with my black gel pen again for the outlines, and for me it's a lot easier to draw the lines kind of quickly so that they're smoother instead of being really wobbly, and they don't have to be perfect at all, so I don't really worry about exactly matching the shapes from the markers. On the top, I'm also drawing another moon and of course a bunch of stars all around, but more so focused towards the top. For the moon, I'm using a white gel pen to make it stand out a bit more, and then I'm peeling off the washi tape, which is always super satisfying. To keep it from ripping up the paper, I find it works a lot better if you keep the tape really close to the page instead of pulling it straight up, if that makes sense. But yeah, and then I'm making a border in black all around that rectangle to finish up the illustration. I wanted to keep the title super simple, so I just used the blue as a background and then wrote December in a minimal all caps font with the letters spaced out really far. And that's it for these first 2 pages, so let's move on to my habit trackers. I wanted to place my titles in the center for this one, and I'm using the blue marker again as a background to keep the color scheme consistent all throughout. Then I of course decorate the space next to the title with more small clouds and stars, which are perfect for filling in little spots because I can make them really small and they're also super simple and quick to do. Again, I try to vary the shapes of the clouds and the positions so that they don't look too similar. I also added this kind of flourish underneath the titles because I just thought it looked nice. Moving on, I first wrote daily as a divider between the title and the habits, and I usually like to track 6 daily habits because it's a nice even number, and I placed 3 on the left and the other 3 on the right, leaving some space in the middle. I used the peachy shade as a background for the habits, and then I wrote the weekdays underneath in blue, and here I'm outlining the trackers in black. I just make a rectangle that's 7 by 5 spaces for each one, so that there are enough boxes for the 31 days in December. Next, I'm crossing out the days from November and January again, like I did for my work calendar, and I'm just using that same orange marker. Then I write down the habits that I want to track, which this month are doing a simple morning routine, practicing some kind of art skill, doing a little 5-minute stretch, planning my day in my bullet journal, making time for some self-care, and lastly doing a little nighttime routine. Then to decorate the middle section, I used some more washi tape like I did for the cover so that I don't have to worry about the edges again, and I drew a bunch of clouds in those same colors and they're kind of peeking out from the border and overlapping each other here and there. Here I'm outlining them again in black, and just as a little tip for drawing these kinds of clouds, I always try to make the bumps more irregular, so I vary between really small ones and then usually a big one on one of the sides, which makes them look super fluffy and just more natural to me. And I do make the bottom flat because that's a bit more realistic than making them super round. I added another moon in the middle of this section, and then I filled the rest of the spaces with more stars like before. Then I'm peeling off the tape and I added another border, which is something I always love to do because it makes everything look a lot more clean and structured. Underneath, I wrote weekly to divide the daily habits from my weekly ones, and then I used the peachy shade again as a background for the habits, and I usually only track 4, so I have 2 on each side. My weekly habits haven't changed a lot, so this month I'm tracking watering my plants, making my weekly spreads in my bullet journal, doing a little weekly reset, and studying an artist. Underneath each habit, I make 5 little circles for each of the weeks that I can color in once I complete them. Moving on to the next page, I'm making my Instagram planner, which I've been using for a couple months at this point, and ever since I incorporated it into my setups, I've been so much more consistent with posting, so I don't see myself changing it anytime soon. I make the title in the same style as for my habits, of course keeping things consistent, so placing it in the middle and then decorating around it with clouds and stars. Now for anyone new to my channel, for this Instagram planner, I make a simple section that I divide into 3 columns. The first one is for what I want to post, the second one is where I write down the weekday and date of when I'm planning to post it, and then in the last column, I make a color code to keep track of my progress, which is what I'm writing down here. So I assign a color to each of these 4 steps, first making the spread, second taking a picture, third editing, and then lastly posting on Instagram. Then I draw 4 circles in those colors into each of the rows so that I can fill them in when I complete each step, and this way I know, for example, when I still need to make a weekly spread or when I need to edit some photos before posting. I think you could also apply this principle to other things, like maybe for school assignments or something that just needs more planning in general. Since we're nearing the end of another year, I thought I would include a few sections on the bottom to plan out my setup for the new year, and I usually like to look back at my old setup and see what I ended up using, what can be improved, and what I want to leave out for the next year, because there's no use in keeping pages you don't end up filling out. By the way, I will try to film my 2023 setup as soon as possible, but I will keep you guys updated through my community posts because I'm not really sure how busy December will be for me yet. But anyway, the first section I'm making here will be for my 2022 spreads, and I didn't have that many, but I wanted to write them down here and then decide if I want to keep them or leave them out. Underneath that, I'm also making a section for my 2023 spreads because I already have some ideas, so I can just write them down here. I kept these sections super simple. I just used the peachy shade as background for the titles again, and then I colored in every second line with that super light pink so that they don't look as empty. On the right, I made one more small section just for some theme ideas because I want something simple and not too specific, so I can write down anything that comes to mind here. And lastly, I just decorated that small space at the bottom with a few little clouds, a moon, and some stars again. And that's these 2 pages finished, so let's move on to my first weekly spread of December. Again, for anyone new to my channel, I love keeping my weekly spreads super simple because I don't want to spend too much time on them each week, so this time I used a layout where the 2 pages are split into 8 equal sections. Now in this first section, I first included a mini calendar because I always like having a small overview of the whole month, and then I decorated the bottom half, kind of like on the cover page where the clouds overlap each other on the bottom. Of course, I also drew a moon, and here I'm outlining the clouds again with my black gel pen, and later adding a bunch of little stars. I colored in the moon with a blue marker, and then I'm peeling off the washi tape and making a border all around this first section. For my daily sections, I used the blue as a background for the titles on the top, and I combined Saturday and Sunday into one section because I usually don't need as much planning space for the weekend, and also because I wanted to balance out the doodle on the top with another section on the bottom. Then I colored in every second line with the light pink again, and the very last one of each section with the peachy shade because that's where I wanted to write the dates, and I just wanted to incorporate that color a bit more. Next, I'm making the borders, and I decided to just include the title in the border because I thought it would fit the rest of the setup a bit better, and I think it also looks a lot cleaner that way. With my journal, each section is 11 spaces wide and 17 spaces tall, and I leave 1 space on the top, the left, and the right, and then also 2 spaces in between the sections, vertically as well as horizontally. I'm actually planning to include a spacing guide for the types of weekly layouts I like to do in my 2023 setup because the sizing is pretty much always the same. I'm I'm writing the weekdays in black as well, and the font I chose is a bit more playful and flowy again, which I thought was fitting for the kind of cute and dreamy theme. And I also wrote the dates in the bottom right corner of each section. Now for that last section on the bottom right, I thought I would include a little quote. So I used the blue again as a background, and I just wrote "Have a cozy day." And then of course I filled the rest of the section with little clouds, a moon, and some stars. I really liked how just positioning the clouds in different ways, like having them overlap on the bottom or floating separately like here, gave the doodles a lot more variation than if I just drew them the same each time. So I really enjoyed this theme. I especially struggle with December themes because they're usually centered around Christmas a lot of the time, but I feel like it gets a bit repetitive, and I also know that not everyone celebrates Christmas, so I wanted to go for a more neutral, cozy theme. Lastly, I just gave this section a border like I did for the other sections to finish it off. And that's the weekly spread all done. I think it turned out super cute, so let's do a little flip through. I really hope you enjoyed planning with me today. I can't believe it's almost December, but I'm also really excited to see what the next year will bring. If you have any questions or ideas, definitely leave a comment down below. I always love reading them, and I try to respond to all of you. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing and joining our little community. And yeah, thank you so much for watching as always, and I hope I'll see you again next time. Bye!